Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Match Slip. My name is Frank Angeloni, and on today's show, we're interviewing Atlas Games, located in City of Industry, California. And I'm joined by the store owner's right-hand man, Joey. And Joey, I'd like to welcome you to the show today.
Hey, nice to meet you again, Frank. Good talking to you, too.
Good meeting you as well. Now, I spoke with the store owner, Rick, and so he said you're his right-hand man. So what does that entail? Like, what is your role at the store?
Basically, most of the time I'm running everything going on. We're only open. We're not really like a traditional store. We're in this huge collectible show that's open 3 days a week. It's probably got maybe like 400 vendors roughly. We have like multiple Magic vendors, probably like 5 or 6 of them. We're the biggest one by a long shot, and we have like a huge inventory. We've been there about 20 plus years. So I've got to do like any of the online. I mean, he takes care of a lot of online stuff. I'll do most of the customers. Anyone who wants anything big, power coming in, any big buys, here I will take care of it. We got a few employees. We move in and out whenever we need a sorting done or anything like that. But it's kind of like a big operation for being such a small, like 3 day a week kind of thing.
So is that your current hours in terms of store operation? It's a 3 day a week store?
Yeah, we're Friday or Saturday, Sunday, and then we have Wednesday too. So basically, like all day Saturday, Sunday, weekends are gone, and then Wednesday we come in about 9 hours, 12 to 9. It's like a retail store combined with a bunch of other vendors. We're competing with like probably 6 or 7 other Magic vendors for buys and selling stuff, and it's kind of like basically like a mini GP every week, pretty much, with the amount of inventory coming in and going out.
And how many stores are within the general vicinity of your area? Because you mentioned with the competing of product and whatnot.
Oh, as far as like stores, there's in the general vicinity, that's kind of hard to have a store because there's so many vendors there. So a lot of stores have booths inside of there. So we have like in that area, there's not too many, but once you start getting like 10 miles out, you're going to see like tons of stores popping up because it's Southern California and there's tons of people here playing Magic.
What could you tell me about the store's history in terms of how it got started, how Rick kind of put the store together, and its origin story, essentially?
Okay, well, I basically came on about 13 years old. I started sorting cards over there at Frankensons, just in general, which is the big collectible area. And I started with another vendor, kind of came on, was playing in the tournaments because they used to hold a ton of tournaments there through Strategy Products, which was what Atlas Games was before it became what it is now. So I would play tournaments there. Eventually, I ended up working for them in about 2006 or 7. Once I started doing that, between that and my other job, I kind of phased out Magic, stopped playing like the big tournaments. I wasn't grinding PTQs as much. And then Rick came along in about 2009 when Zendikar came out, when they had the huge treasure thing and stuff. We were cracking a ton of it. We basically sold out of boxes that first day, and we get a ton of boxes. That was like a huge one. And right when he came in, we kind of flipped the business model around. We were doing a lot more stuff, started getting a big customer base, that more than we had before, at least. And it just started taking up a lot more time, and we started doing a lot more since 2009. After that, we picked up over and over, kept building inventory. We have, I would say now at this point, probably one of the biggest inventories, at least in California. Massive how much stuff we have.
How many pallets of like boxes are you guys buying, with that being said, on like a new set basis?
New set, it's a lot. I don't even know the exact numbers at this point because we get them from like different places. Rick would probably be more in line with a sealed product. I deal more with the like big buys that like coming in with as far as like singles and stuff like that.
How many of those transactions would you say you handle in a given day?
Oh, a day at Frankensons, like transactions, we do at least like 50 to 60, and it'll be varying sizes. We have people coming in we'll have people email in. We'll get like come into like 10 emails of full EDH decks that we got to build in like 3 hours, which kind of a hassle, but we're able to keep up. It's got to kind of stagger it out. We're kind of growing like at a bigger pace than we thought we would, especially after the pandemic. We weren't sure how things were going to pan out. Turned out to be Magic did really well. So it worked out a little bit better than we thought it would.
That's good. And what about, you mentioned Frankensons. So is Atlas Game Store is at Frankensons? I'm just not familiar with that relationship there.
Oh, yeah. So Frankensons is basically a huge collectible show. They got everything from like A lot of Pokemon card vendors, a lot of like sports collectibles, a little bit of everything, like anime stuff, statues. It used to be this big warehouse, and then we ended up moving into a lot nicer warehouse. It used to be a Sam's Club, and they just redid it to be like a huge collectible show. It's like say you've been to like a Comic Con, like a small Comic Con or like an Anime Con. It's like one of those, but 3 times a week.
I see. So this isn't technically Atlas's Games' first location. You've had other spots where the store has been prior to Frank and Sons.
No, just here.
Oh, it is just here. Okay.
Yeah,
Because I know you had mentioned about the Sam's Club. So was that
that's when the whole building moved. We had moved from one building to like just this way better, nicer, more like polished up place.
the amount of volume you guys are doing, and with how many transactions you're doing? How do the games factor in terms of like the games that you hold, like with Magic the Gathering, for example? Like, are you guys putting on those type of events?
No, not really. We're not able to really do events just because it's only 3 days a week. As far as like play space, we don't have any there. They do allow for events to happen there, but it's usually like someone will come in and do them. Like we have at Frankinson specifically, we have Cash Cards Unlimited doing a huge CEDH tournament there. They did one last year that they gave out a Black Lotus and a bunch of other stuff. This year they're doing Time Twister, a bunch of masterpieces. So that's like one of the big days where everyone comes in and there's tons more players, and we do a ton of business that day also.
Well, that's cool. Now I know you mentioned Cassius Marsh, who's a NFL football player, and I've seen him on like various shows like the Command Zone and whatnot. Is he a frequent visitor to Frank and Sons?
He used to come a lot more. I think ever since I'm sure he opened his store, he's been really busy. He used to come down. I mean, we met him when he was first buying cards from us, and then he eventually had his own store, which was like awesome for us to hear.
I saw also on your Instagram page that Post Malone also has frequented you guys before.
Yeah, I think he's been down twice so far. The first day he came was probably one of the craziest work days I've had there. Not even as far as selling, because I mean, we couldn't even do that much selling at that point because he was just getting mobbed by fans the entire time. But he came in and checked out a few of the booths, and then he came to us. And at the time, we had another guy working there, Marco. He came up and talked to him. He's a big fan, and he just showed him all the cards we had, and we just hit it off right away and started talking Magic with him, he's very into the game and knows way more than I thought he would have known at that point.
I know he recently spent, I don't know, I forget how recent it was, but I know he spent like, there was a card he wanted. I think it was the Black Lotus card, and he spent the exorbitant amount of money. I think he wanted it really bad. And it was like one of the things he wanted it. He didn't want to talk about it though. Something that was like along the lines of what I remember, because he was a guest on the Command Zone podcast, like I was saying, and he was talking a little bit about this.
Yeah, I remember seeing that he has clips running about it on the Howard Stern show as well, that when he was talking to him about it. And that's probably one of the biggest buys as far as I've ever seen of Lotus's transactions ever.
Is the Frank and Sons location where Atlas Games is at, if I'm understanding how I'm thinking about this in my mind, is there multiple stores within this big box store, I guess?
Yeah, it's just a ton of booths lined up there. As far as Magic stores, there's stores in there that have stores near us also. Shuffle and Cut Games, some other games are all the other stores are around, but they're not really like full stores.
I see. Yeah, when I'm thinking about it from like what I see out here in New York by me, I'm thinking almost like we used to have something it was called the Atias Flea Market. It was a gigantic building, and inside there was multiple vendors. And it was a constant thing, mostly run on Saturdays, like weekends and stuff. I don't know if they had stuff during the week, but it was that kind of element. And I'm kind of picturing this being in a similar boat.
Yeah, totally like that. But we try not to use the word like flea market and stuff like that, because it's literally like just a lot of high end collectibles, a lot of big stuff in there. Like we got video game vendors that have like tons of stuff. Like I got really into retro video games, and I started buying like a ton of like cool games. There's like Nintendo 64 collections that are worth like tens of thousands of dollars, stuff like that.
What's like the oldest video games you've seen there? Because I've always been a big Super Nintendo fan. That was my first ever system, and that's like what I would be searching for. Is that kind of stuff there?
Oh yeah, tons of SNES stuff. Even if you want to get in touch with me in the future, I can find some stuff for you. I just picked up like a cardboard box like Earthworm Jim. I've seen like Earthbound carts there that are amazing.
Oh, that's very cool. Yeah, I'll definitely have to take you up on that. I'll have to see which ones I already have, and I'll have to let you know. But I think that's really neat to have that kind of variety at that location, which it seems to be there's like quite a ton of variety for whatever you might be looking for.
Oh yeah, I mean, I usually direct people wherever they need to. As they ask something, I roughly know what vendors have what and what the good ones are to deal with, as far as like any other type of product too.
Very cool. Now, when you wanted to play, when you had the time to play Magic yourself, where would you normally go to do that?
Um, so I did get some time when we were not open Sundays. I was getting a lot of RCQs in. I'd go to one of our friendly stores, Top Deck Keep, which is in Riverside, which is not too far from us. It's about 30 minutes out. That's one of my favorite stores to attend, at least. I mean, way back when I first started, I started going to the Costa Mesa Women's Club, which is like, if anyone knows like Magic history, that's like one of the big spots where like Mark Rosewater used to go to. A lot of the early pros. That's basically how I learned how to be okay at Magic. I'd say they're a lot better than me. People like, I mean, even when I was a little kid, Rick was one of the people who was really good at Magic at the time, and I kind of looked up to as far as playing ability. He had been to the Pro Tour like multiple times at that point, and we had kind of developed like him just crushing me in tournaments.
That's very neat. I didn't realize that Rick was a professional player as well.
Oh yeah, probably is way back when like Saga Block was like basically a thing. I mean, I think he was on the Pro Tour roughly like 12 times if you look it up.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I don't think he says it very much, but I think maybe he'll get mad at me for saying it out now. But
That's impressive, though. I mean, to make it that many times when so many people, grind to try to just qualify just to get in there just once. I'm actually, myself, as we record this, I'm going to be playing in an RCQ this weekend for Pioneer. So I'm looking forward to doing that.
oh, nice. And what deck are you playing in Pioneer right now?
So I'm not a follow the grain in terms of playing the best deck. I'm going to play Boros aggro. I really like the Feather the Redeem card, and I like the ability to play instants and sorceries, get them back, continue to do that. I know it was more of a thing early on when Pioneer first started, but it was a deck I really liked. I've played on Magic Online a little bit, and I want to continue trying it out to see if it could do anything in the format right now.
Yeah, those are definitely like one of the decks where you can catch them off guard with a very consistent aggro plan. So I mean, any of those should be fine, especially in that format.
What drew you to competitive play when you were doing it more frequently?
I guess when I was a kid, I was super competitive, and then I got really busy during high school. I was playing a little bit, and then I had like a lot of stuff going on during wrestling, so I kind of stopped. And then once I got out of high school, we were just playing every day basically. So I was trying to get better all the time, and I was playing against really good people because in Southern California we had tons of good players. I mean, I was getting crushed all the time and learning a lot. So eventually I just started I picked up a lot of combo decks. I was really a fan of Extended at the time, which went by the wayside for a while, and kind of once they killed that was really when I stopped playing competitively. I think it was 2007. I can't really remember the exact date, but once they rotated it out, stopped playing because I couldn't play Mind's Desire Storm. That was kind of my big deck. And after that, the next time I kind of played competitive was around Kaladesh when they had like the Aetherworks Marvel deck and stuff like that. And then some blue-white control decks here and there. I just like playing a lot. And now to scratch my itch, I kind of get in a bunch of cube drafts because it's probably my favorite format to play with a bunch of friends besides like some casual commander with a beer or two.
Prior to playing competitively, what drew you to Magic in general? Like, what just drew you into the game to then eventually start working at Atlas?
Oh, it was literally like probably the first time I played. I got hooked in sixth grade with like a bunch of friends playing during whatever the break period was for 10 minutes. We didn't even know how to play really. We played, but we played like you can play all your lands at once and you draw till you have 7 cards, which anyone who knows Magic, you're basically cheating. Everyone's a combo deck. You're playing Scaled Worms on turn 3. They're not that great, but you're still winning. And so after that, like I started like learning a lot about Magic. I'd go get like those weird books they had in like Barnes and Noble. I still have a bunch of them on my shelf over here. Mastering Magic cards by, let me see if I can get this, George Baxter, stuff like that. So I have those books and I just start writing deck lists all the time. And then I started collecting cards and just picking up whatever I could whenever I could. And then once I found a place where I could play tournaments, it just like I was just playing all the time, which kind of was a detriment at the time for my schoolwork and my regular work. But I ended up putting it by the wayside when I needed to, and when I didn't need to, I didn't.
Right, yeah, no, I noticed that was the big pull in for me was the building of the decks. That became a big thing for me early on.
One of the reasons I still love working in Magic, because I know people get burnt out all the time, consistently. People don't even want to play Magic when they're doing it sometimes, and I really still love building decks. So we have like a service that I always do with customers, especially Commander players, because that's our biggest format for basically any dealer nowadays. $100 and up, any deck, just name the commander, and I usually can build it for like $100 or more. They just decide what price range they want, and I build pretty much any deck. I got a spreadsheet full of deck lists I've been making. Like whenever I get bored, I just start typing up deck lists for whatever commander, and I've got like probably like 150 decks on that Google sheet. And if we need one pulled, I'll just like swap out some cards, figure out what people want, and ask them what they want in the deck, and make whatever cool deck I can.
So are the customers for the most part asking you to build it for them? Do they have some idea of what they want when they're buying from you guys?
I always ask, like, what do you want the deck to do? What do you want, like, the win conditions to be? Sometimes they just give me, like, free reign. Sometimes I have some customers who just come in and, like, dealer's choice on Commander, which is, like, my favorite because I'll build some weird ones. I don't even know. There's some, like, Ruxa, the one with no ability Commander. So there's some bad ones, but they always turn out kind of well. I try and build them, especially if it's a group of people, I try and build them all on the same power level roughly. But it's usually really, I don't get a lot of bad reviews on the commander decks. They usually come out and like tell me like, oh, I want another one. I get a lot of repeat customers that way.
So are most of the customers commander players that you're noticing that go to Atlas?
It kind of changed that way up until it became that way up about six years ago. I got into commander about a little bit before the release of the first commander decks, because we had found it and we get bored with formats really quick. So we started playing that one-on-one though, and it was a little weird because we didn't have like 4 people all the time, so we just played one-on-one. And then about 5 or 6 years ago, when people started really picking it up, our whole business model changed from like that standard pay attention to rotation, sell your cards as fast as possible, to like, oh, we're going to want like Wheel of Fortunes. We're going to want basically all these commander staples. Soul Rings got stacked up high, all that stuff. And we kind of saw the trend coming, because customers really inform you like where things are going. And as long as you listen to your customers, you're really going to get a gist of like what's going on in Magic.
Absolutely. And do you find you guys are buying more, selling more? Is it a 50-50 split? Like what do you notice on a day-to-day basis?
It's a lot of ebb and flow in Magic. You're going to get some weeks where you're just buying a ton, some weeks where you're selling a ton. A lot of people always ask like, oh, Magic's dying, I need to sell some stuff, right? But I always see it as like, as long as stuff's coming in and stuff's going out, it's going to be like, you just got to keep pace with it. I guess right now I'd say we're buying a little bit more, but we're still selling a lot. It's comes in and out. It just depends what you're buying and what you're selling. It's going to come from like Pioneer seasons. You just need the cards to have. So it's just nice to have a nice backstock of each kind of card in inventory.
When you hear people saying like Magic is dying, like based on the negative feedback that gets thrown around at times, from a store standpoint, what does that look like on your end of the coin? Like, do you see any truth or slight truths to that?
I see problems with where things are going, but I've always maintained that I think Magic is a really strong game in general, and there's got to be like some cat. I've heard every single thing about Magic is dying for this many years. I've been playing since like Tempest, so it's every week is something different that it's dying. So I mean, I don't think it's going to happen, but I can see like problems arising over this massive amount of printing. If they make bad sets, that's where Magic's got the problem. If they can keep printing as much as they need to, but if they're going to make bad sets, it's really going to mess up some of the stores.
And with the amount of printing that's going on with all the different variants in terms of like foiling and all the different foils they're doing now, which we kind of saw brought to a new level, not too long ago. I mean, it was actually not too long ago where it was just the standard foils that, we were used to. And now there's different variations that you can get. Has that been problematic, like from a store, to keep track of all that?
Oh, yeah. It's a lot of stuff. I had prided myself basically up to like 4 years ago. I think I prided myself on like knowing almost every Magic card, even like the really obscure ones, really bad ones. When like the bear deck came out, I had all the pale bears ready to go. But nowadays it's probably been like the biggest hassle I've ever had trying to keep up with every different card, let alone every version of every different card. And I used to like be able to rattle off prices pretty easily even, but now I got to check everything every time. It's a little too much, but I mean, I try and keep up as much as I can.
Is filing everything, I'm guessing, probably a hindrance as well, especially because you have more to account for. That I mean, that would probably cut into the time to making the decks and whatnot, and trying to handle all the because you guys get a number of orders like you were referring to.
It's a huge problem as far as not as much as making the decks. Usually making the decks, people come in, they want the cheapest version. It's not too bad. But as far as when people want specific things, I don't even know the difference between a borderless and an extended. On like the Kamigawa set, that was confusing for like a few weeks, and some of the names of the different versions of the card, TCG Player labeling them differently than people think they are. Those have all been problematic things we can handle, but I mean, I could see it getting just out of hand with the cascade and the volume of stuff coming out.
I've definitely had trouble myself trying to keep track of what the difference is between borderless and extended. Is that something you could explain? Like, because if I were to take a guess, the borderless one is the one that you could see towards the bottom of the card through it, if that makes sense. It almost looks like it's full art, but like hidden behind the masking of the text.
Oh yeah, I think I would have to look at one right now. But the only way I know it now was the borderless was almost always alternate art for those when there's an extended also. Extended will just be the same art as the original, which is also confusing because I didn't even know which one the original art was at the time, depending how much we opened and if we're opening more collectors than regular set or whatever.
Do you guys only deal in Magic, or do you deal in other TCG games?
We mostly try and keep it to Magic as far as what we have because it's just so in depth and we do so much Magic in general. But we do a little bit of Pokemon Sealed, One Piece Sealed, some other games we randomly decide to get. We're probably going to try and get some Lorcana because that's going to be huge. That's how we try and keep it, just because Magic's such a big thing and it's so much to catalog. But I mean, I wouldn't mind doing more Pokemon, but we can't do like singles. I don't think I'd want to do it, to be honest.
Yeah, I can understand that would be a lot to handle with already the load you guys are handling.
Yeah, especially only 3 days a week, and that's not a lot of time to be doing Pokemon, Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, One Piece, any of those other games.
Sure. Now I understand with doing 3 days a week. Is there a reason why that was decided to only do three?
Well, it was only two before. That's just how when the place is open. We do have like time to come sort and stuff on Thursday, but we do stuff from home, like online stuff and things like that. But we are all working. Like I work at Rick does other stuff. I work my other job I'm an inventory manager for iHeart Raves. We just had a huge festival. EDC happened. So we did that, and it was. I mean, I'm swamped usually between both jobs.
I didn't realize that the Frank and Sons would only be open the 3 days. So it's not even like you have the option, like they're open, 5 days a week, say, and you wanted to run the business 4 days a week there. You don't even have that choice. It's just based on when they're open.
Yeah, that's where we're at right now.
With the store in its current form, did Rick ever discuss any plans about wanting to bring in the ability to have players to play at any point in time, like either moving out of Frank and Sons or like to have his own location?
Yeah, we do have we did used to have a play area there, and then we had tournaments before that, which is kind of where I like started like cutting my teeth in Magic. They had like at the time it was like $100 tournaments for first place, 50 for second, stuff like that. There's a lot when I was like a little kid trying to figure out how to play Psychotog. But ever since that, I mean, there has always been talk of opening a store. We just need the time and the people to do it, which I think we would have, but it just depends on what everyone's doing. I've considered not being at my other job at points and just doing full-time Magic, which I think would be a blast at this point, but I don't know when I want to make that switch.
It's kind of, I guess it's a little bit up in the air right now in terms of that type of move. It's something that's desired, but not known at this current point in time.
Yeah, not pertinent, but at the same time, it would be nice to have the extra days. And I think we have a huge enough customer base to where we can bring in a lot of people.
Yeah, that would be great to see. I definitely hope that for you guys. The next thing I was going to ask you about was the online side of the business that you were alluding to. Is that like done through TCG Player or any other marketplaces?
Yeah, mostly TCG Player, just a basic run of the mill. We get a lot of excess stock, so we like to get rid of a lot of it on TCG Player. Any of the extra stuff, we'll get like stacks of cards that like spiked up that will have like laying in backstock. Like I know when Indomitable Creativity went up, we had a ton of them just laying around that I had tossed back for like with like the bulk rares. So we had to get rid of a ton of those. So we'll do any of that like extra stuff that's hot.
Do you feel that more of the business comes from in-person traffic at Frank and Sons, or do you find more of it's coming from online with TCG Player?
It's going to be a lot more in person, which is like a weird thing for us to say as far as like stores nowadays. I know most of the retail stuff has been like a smaller end of a lot of businesses. For us, it's a lot of people coming in, a lot of people pre-ordering like any sealed products, stuff like that.
Very interesting. And to be able to accumulate the amount of single cards that you guys are selling, that would mean you're cracking, I would imagine, a lot of boxes in order to do that. Is there a split between like the amount of sealed product that people sell? I know you said you deal more your side with the single cards, but I'm curious, like in terms of you would have to, I imagine, crack the box for it, or customers coming in and it's enough where they're selling enough cards to where you don't necessarily need to do that?
We crack a decent amount of boxes. I would not say like we're not on like Star City Games level where they're just unloading boxes till they get number one Ragavan. Not that level, but we crack a decent amount of boxes. It's we keep a heavy stack for opening day of sets, especially if we think they're really good or have really good singles. I know there's some sets where I don't want to crack at all, where they're just terrible. I mean, Aftermath wasn't. I didn't even know what to do with this product.
So yeah, could you talk a little bit about the Aftermath? Because I've heard really like poor reviews on it in terms of it's not selling. People are definitely from a customer standpoint and businesses standpoint, people are selling it off for cheap. Like the singles may at some point do a little bit well because the less people opening, the single cards become more. So what are you seeing with Atlas, like in terms of the appeal for that product, or lack of appeal, I should say?
I mean, I feel like I kind of saw it coming. It's just so few cards in that set. And people are getting so little for, I think, in my opinion, they're getting so little for their money as far as cardboard comes. And they like getting a lot of cards. People like opening a lot of cards. They're coming in, they're getting a product which is like kind of a set, but not really a set. The cards are decent, which is great, but it's coming in at like a normal price for a set. And we're getting it. It's a fine set, but not a good set. People don't want to buy it. People don't want to open it. People mostly, especially Commander players, want the singles they want. And when they come in and it's a set with like 5 cards, they're just going to buy the singles. They need like 2 cards out of the set. The packs, they're just not going to sell at that point. But I agree with you 100% as far as the single prices go. A lot of the cards are really good and people are going to want them. So the single prices are just going to keep going up while people are just having this product sit on the shelf.
So how do you guys react when you are starting to hear that type of feedback early on where a set may not be, what it's trying to be hyped up to be, or a new set's coming out, and before you even may place your orders with the distributors to acquire that product, how do you accommodate for those that may want it, but knowing that the downfall of ordering too much could be a net negative?
It's a tough balance. We really like to order enough to keep our players happy, but at the same time, like we also need to stay afloat. But we did order a decent amount of it. You always have to keep like those minimums you have to order of every set. So we cracked enough. We got kind of enough singles. Any of the high end stuff was really hard for us to get. We didn't have any of that. People were asking for a lot of Ob Nixilis and Nissa Day one, and we only had a few copies of each of the really high end ones. We have a lot of like the cheaper ones, but people, especially Commander players, want like the best version of each card for their deck, and they're going to be tough to get in the future for that set.
Are the distributors, you mentioned a minimum, are distributors requiring a certain amount of product to be bought with each set that you want to stock?
Not really, but you do want to like keep everyone happy, and you want to order enough for you and them to be both happy. So you just get a decent amount of each thing, and everyone's kind of, you keep a copacetic relationship.
So what would you say is one of the like unique selling points for people to shop at Atlas?
I'd say, I mean, I'm going to be a little biased. It's getting a commander deck that you really want that's going to be ideal and optimized for like $100 to $200, probably $125 to $225 worth of cards. I'd say that's the best thing. But there's also like, we're going to keep the prices pretty low because we aren't paying as much overhead as, say, a store, I think. We're in there, and we give pretty good prices. We give very good prices on buying, especially on the older stuff. We pay really high on dual lands, stuff like that. We give good trade bump, 10%, and our prices are already pretty low, so it kind of evens out. And we got the biggest selling point is probably we have almost everything. We've got tons of duels, tons of masterpieces, all at reasonable prices. You come in and we're going to help you out. And everyone's basically a player there. So we kind of all know what's good. I can talk to you about pretty much any format because I try and keep up with everything. And my other job, I'm kind of like able to just listen to podcasts most of the day. So like that's why I've listened to yours so many times, and like all the other, basically all the Magic podcasts, I'm like in constant loop on. So I kind of know what's going on in every format, and I like to keep up and just let people know like what's good in this deck, what's good in that deck, what you need here, what you need there.
That's really cool. How have you been able to keep the prices so low?
We just try and keep everything like, I mean, if there's like places where I can like get just a little bit less on a card for like, let's say there's like some dings, I can mark it as LP, stuff like that. I try and make your dollar stretch as far as it can, basically. Get the cheapest version every time, do whatever I can to make it as cheap for you as possible.
I mean, I'm sure the players also appreciate it too, because I know whenever I could find a good deal, I'm always satisfied with that, especially with the more expensive cards. I think probably for me, the biggest thrill, one of my favorite cards in all of Magic is Liliana of the Veil. And so when that got reprinted in Dominaria United and went to like $15, I was extremely thrilled. I never thought I would own that card, to be honest with you.
That's hilarious. That's like easily one of my favorite cards as well.
Yeah, it's really good, really powerful. So how many employees does Atlas employ at this point in time? Is it just part-time or full? Are there full-timers too?
I mean, we're all basically, anyone who's working there is working every day we're open pretty much. We have I think it's 6 of us right now.
And do you all pretty much do the same similar thing? Are there job titles to separate who does what?
There's not really job titles. We kind of all have, we have a person who just sorts basically. We have like, me and Rick will do most of the big buys and big sales, but we also have another like few people who will do both sales and buys, stuff like that. Everyone's kind of does a little bit of everything, minus like 2 people roughly. We have one person just selling on the front. It's kind of hard to give like job titles in that situation because we're constantly like, customers are constantly flowing in and out. We got to either get lists done immediately or get big buys done. So we kind of rotate. Everyone's kind of a utility player.
Okay. How has it been from your end of things? Like, even if this is more of you mentioning what Rick deals with, that's fine. Dealing with distributors, I know could sometimes be a hassle, because I'm just thinking, even in terms of if we take a business, say, for example, that like the comic book industry, when they're dealing with distributors, one of the things that they're always concerned about is damaged comics. So how is it from a Magic the Gathering standpoint with dealing with distributors and the product being, in solid condition, not damaged? Like how is that relationship like?
That's going to be more his end, but also, I mean, I see it all the time. So I kind of handle this one. It's not too bad. We don't get too many problems mostly. There's been a few times where like, I think it was Double Masters, the one with the small boxes. We had some of the cases that usually come with 8 come with 7, but you could never tell because it's so tightly packed in and the boxes are really small. So we had about 1 or 2 of those cases come with 7. And then the other issue was some of the commander decks coming with 2 of the same commander deck in the case. But all of those are usually handled pretty easily, like any of that stuff. We don't get too much damaged product. That's very rare. I've seen like some loose packaging on the wrap, but it's not like anything was tampered with or anything.
That's good to know. I've always wondered too. I know since you don't hold events specifically, you may not be able to answer this, but the limits that you'll see, like for example, like with pre-releases, for example, where a store can only get a certain amount. Is that purely based on the size of the store or whether it's premium or not? Or is there another factor that goes into how much product for a pre-release, for example, can be allocated? So say, for example, Atlas, like say you were able to hold events and you wanted to, and you guys were doing that now, would there be a limit from the distributor that you'd be able to get?
I'm fairly certain. I think it's everyone has a certain amount that they get based on like their previous tournament history and how many people they normally get. I think they base it on that.
Oh, that's interesting. I always had wondered how that whole process actually played out. I never really actually knew.
Yeah, I know it's a real limited supply because even when we're able to get some pre-release kits from anyone who has them, it's kind of very few and far between that anyone's able to get.
When it comes to the costs of the business, you guys are in a unique standpoint where, like you mentioned, everybody's a utility player and you don't have to worry about too much overhead, as well as, there's not other things to maintain, like say, the electricity, because Atlas is in Frankenstein. So you're not having the utilities on top of it. So what from an Atlas game store standpoint, what's the biggest cost for you guys in terms of, since overhead's not really the biggest cost at this point?
The biggest cost to anything, I always say, is time. We just don't have enough time for everything we need to do all the time. The more time you have, the more money we can make. That's how I look at things.
And what has Rick felt, and also your opinion as well, like to stretch out that time to maximize it? What would be ideal? I know you had mentioned potentially if you were able to do this full time, I know that would help a lot. But like, what would,
Yeah.
from a big picture standpoint, do you think would be ideal for Atlas?
It's a lot of, I like to use a lot of my free time to sort, which is probably not beneficial and stuff like that, and do other things that we need to get done. But I think ideally just everyone maximizing what they can do when they can do it. I work in a warehouse inventory management right now, and every person is basically able to do everything as efficiently as I can get it right now. And I like that to be flowing, everyone doing the best thing they can do and the thing they're best at. That's what I think is best for basically any business, I think.
And how has your full-time job that you've been describing, how has that helped you with doing then the part-time gig with Atlas? How has that balanced itself out in terms of giving you insights to help you further the Atlas business?
It's been really helpful as far as getting like a great balance of like what we have and what we're moving. And I'm able to pay attention more to like what we need as a business, as far as, especially with singles and stuff like that, and product. I can pay attention to what people are buying, what's selling. And if I can just look at a report easily and see this is the best thing to have, this is the best thing, this is not selling, now I can dissect things and what we're going to need in the future. Especially when I think analyzing a set before it comes out is also a good trait to have. Just looking at what cards are good, what cards might not be good. Not spec buying anything necessarily, but just looking to see if there's like an overall value in the total part of it.
When a set's about to come out, with that in mind, what you said, do you make any notes to yourself? Do you keep track of anything to prepare for the influx that might come of people wanting the card, how to determine how to price the cards? Or do you guys just use TCG Player as your market barometer to determine that?
I absolutely look at everything going on, as far as like, I like to look for like huge uncommons, especially like in Commander, like the white card that came out recently that gives protection from your creatures. That card, stuff like that, is going to be like a big seller, especially if it's something in the uncommon slot that has value is really huge for selling packs of the set. You're going to get a lot more of those. Stuff as far as like good rares, like the Ledger Shredder in the previous set, Fable of the Mirror Breaker, those ones are all huge like incentives for that set to do well. Even though Streets of New Commander didn't do too well, but at least like you're able to like, maybe like you get some Ledger Shredders, you're like, I don't know if I want to sell this for like $7. I think it might be a little bit better than that. So it kind of just like try and maybe keep one or two for myself and see what's going to go happen, and then keep them for later.
Yeah. How much does the market speculation play into what decisions you have to make? Or is that something you'll tune out the speculation since it's not like a proven asset yet?
Yeah, we kind of just kind of sell everything. So I don't really speculate too much, but I like to speculate on a set as a whole if it's going to be good. If it's like more of an open, we're going to open a lot of it set, or if it's more of a like, this is going to be sealed product to hold for now.
And it's funny you mentioned that 1 mana protection spell from the March of the Machine set. I actually was drafting yesterday in our store championship, and I had, I think, 2 of that exact card. I'm drawing a blank on the name, but I got to use it multiple times, and it didn't make my opponent happy, but it's definitely a very powerful card. And, you know, when they're printing stuff like that, you could definitely see the usability of it in constructed formats as well. So that, I mean, that adds another level of demand that the card could see.
And that's a huge thing for cards. As far as the cards that have gotten really good as of late, it's cards that are going to, the ones that get really expensive are cross format cards. It's EDH card, plus it's good in like Pioneer and Standard, aka Sheldred, Ledger Shredder, Fable the Mirror Breaker. All those cards, those are all the cards that are skyrocketing from like $7 to $25, from like $40 to $60. Those are all the best cards to have. Even if they get banned next week, whenever those bannings come out for Standard, I think they're going to be as fine as Meat Hook Massacre is at $40 still.
How do you keep track, though, of those price fluctuations? I know you can monitor them, but how, like with your own inventory, do you have to then go back and then, all right, we have to change this price, this and that, because you have so many cards to begin with? I can imagine that would be very taxing.
Well, the one thing that's beneficial about only being open 3 days is I kind of like have to check the prices pretty consistently on those days I'm in. So when I'm in, if it's a 3 day break between when I've been there and when I haven't, I can hear what's going on in Magic, but I got to keep up. And that day I have to check everything once again.
You know, something I didn't even think about this at first, but only doing the 3 days a week actually gives you an advantage, I would say, on some of the other competition, particularly in the Southern California area.
Yeah, it lets us kind of like let cards breathe a little bit. Like especially like when the ledger shredder thing that happened, it'll happen over the weekend. We'll watch it kind of move around, and then on Monday it'll start spiking. But we haven't sold any on Sunday, so we're good.
That's good. At least you have, a little bit of a foresight into what might be coming, while other stores are, having to run the tournaments and whatnot and distracted and have other things with the day-to-day business. You guys have this extra period that they're not afforded.
Yeah, it's good and bad at the same time. Like, I mean, we're not selling for multiple days, so that's bad. But at the same time, we can wait on any card to like fluctuate in price, and we'll see it when it pops up.
Absolutely. And so what would you say is some future plans or desires that Atlas Games has, and what you have and your personal aspirations for the business?
One of my favorite things to do is I like vending at GPs. We do them on occasion, or they're not GPs now, Magic Fests. We helped out during Magic Fest 30 Vegas, which was one of our big shows. That was awesome. Any of the other ones coming up, I'd like to do a few more of them. We used to do them a lot more. We did Vegas when it was, I think, 2019, I think, one of the ones. And Vegas is easily my favorite one to go to and vend at. The buying cards for 16 hours or so is a blast to me. I could do it all day. In the future, as far as the business in general, I'd like to probably venture more into it than my other job, e-commerce. It's very similar to what they both intersect, kind of. They're both e-commerce businesses. So Magic's got a little more in my heart to me than clothing for raves.
I can definitely understand that. What about, has Rick ever communicated any desires he has for the store?
I'm not 100% sure yet. I've been meaning to talk to him about it more, but I think we have a lot we can do with it, and we'll probably end up doing a lot more in the future.
I look forward to seeing what you guys do. And I guess my final question here to wrap things up is related to two conventions, since you had brought it up, and it was one of the things I was thinking about earlier. Is that a big part of the business, is going to conventions, since you guys can almost, like, in some ways, I would imagine, pick up and bring it to someplace else like Las Vegas? Granted, the GPs aren't a thing, but we have Magic Fest, which I wish they would bring GPs back. That's just my personal opinion. But that's also me loving the competitive side of Magic from my days of playing sports too. So we have that in common. And I know the conventions and whatnot enable you to do a lot more selling. And I wonder if, when comparing GPs to Magic Fests, which one was the better opportunity for selling cards at?
GPs aren't, or Magic Fest, I should say, aren't really, they're a part of the business, but they only happen every so often. So we only try and stay like to the local ones. It's really good for us because we like to sell things really low at GPs. Basically, like what we do over there, because I've noticed a lot of the prices at Magic Fest are a little bit higher, maybe like even medium price. I'm not getting usually very crazy deals because I'm looking for like pre-modern foils and stuff like that, usually for myself. And I kind of check out all the booths. But we like to sell things really low cost so we can just move a bunch of inventory when we're at GP. So it's really good for us when we do it, and we get a ton of inventory in, which is, I love to get a bunch of Magic cards. I love buying Magic cards. I'm going to keep buying them probably for the rest of my life. And to that, I would love for GPs to come back. But Magic Fest, the last one we helped at, was really good. I think they really curate the kind of all the vendors they have, and they have a really good suite of them. There's all the stores there are pretty cool as far as like what I've met with a lot of people.
Do you find them to be as profitable and inventory collection wise a net positive compared to, say, doing a non-Magic convention? I should first start off with, have you done any non-Magic conventions?
No, I've never done any non-Magic conventions, but I have been to a lot of non-Magic conventions. I like to go, like me and my wife like to go to like all the anime cons and stuff like that. Any retro game festivals I'll love to be at. Anytime I see Magic there, I usually just see it very minimal and it's not too much. So I guess I've never really thought about that. And you're putting this in my head now, is I don't know how big the market is there, but if you were there, you would have most of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know I looked at that aspect of things when I went to Comic-Con in New York, and I've seen booths of people selling Magic packs, and there have been some vendors selling single cards. It's not many, like you're alluding to. But I think if you had a substantial inventory, which Atlas has, I mean, like you mentioned, you have almost anything, a Magic player can want. I think that would be a great, boost for any Magic store that's looking to sell. I would imagine, because, you figure the people who are into Magic cards are going to be into, like you mentioned, anime, comics, very similar, those types of genres. So I would be intrigued to see stores go along that route and try outside of Magic Fests.
Yeah, I think we'd really have to test the waters on that too. As far as only having Saturday and Sunday and Wednesday right now, we'd have to get enough inventory to just move along enough people.
Sure, yeah. There's that to factor in too. It's the packing everything up and bringing it that factors into the cost of things too, and the booth and the renting price of the space.
Yeah, the least fun part is packing up the stuff and moving and setting up that booth. No, everything else is fun after that to me, but packing it up is a rough one. Packing it up.
Definitely. Would you like, Joey, to tell the people listening anything else about Atlas Games before we wrap up for today?
Yeah, if anyone's at Frankincense or in Southern California in general, come down to Frankincense. Even if you don't shop with us, it's going to have something for you. If you want Magic cards, come to us. It's going to be the best place you can go in that building. There's a ton of other stuff, though, retro games, stuff like that. We're going to have pretty much any Magic card you want. I mean, we might have some Pokemon stuff, but if you need any Magic cards, you can talk to me. Mention the Match Slip podcast, just because this is the first podcast I've ever done, and it was pretty fun. So
yeah, I enjoyed it too. It was a fun time. And where can they find you online?
So the best place to find us is, you can contact me at Atlas Game Store on Instagram. I usually run that one, and then our email, atlasgamestore@gmail.com, and that's the easiest way to reach us.
Excellent. And I'll have all that in the show notes. Joey, thanks for coming on. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, dude, great talking to you.
Well, thanks again to Joey for joining us from Atlas Games. If you enjoyed the show, we invite you to subscribe on anchor.fm/thematchlip. If you'd like to join our newsletter, you could do so at thematchlip.com/newsletter. We also do the game store profiles on the Matchlip website, and we invite you to go there, check them out, and check out your local game store, support them, and we will talk to you in the next interview. Take care.